Woo, that three-headed backcourt at Baylor is no more. Keontae George is off to the NBA. Adam Flagler, who knows? But LJ Cryer, you know where he's going? To the Houston Cougars. He's staying in the Big 12, baby.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. Oh yes, even in the offseason, we're with you 5 days a week. I'm Isaac Shade. Joining me right now, the host of Locked On Cougs, our guy Parker Ainsworth at Painsworth 512. That was my Georgia accent coming out right there on those numbers. Parker, I know you are happy right now getting some LJ Cryer into the fold. But also, my friend, you are so close to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Friends, if you're listening in right now, would you do me a solid, do Parker a solid, go subscribe to Locked On Cougs right now. 967 YouTube subscribers as of this recording. He needs 33 more. My hope is that by the time this even posts, that he's already over 1,000. Parker, congrats, and welcome in to the show. So, Parker, let's start right there with LJ Cryer. This, to me, is the most important transfer commitment so far because when you've got somebody like Marcus Sasser who's going to be stepping out, you got to replace him in a big-time way. And I know they're different players, but boy, what a splash this is for Kelvin Sampson.
Yeah, they're different players in that LJ Cryer actually shoots a better three-point percentage. like how is that your replacement? No, I think it's great to see a kid come back home, too. So he grew up in Katy, which is a suburb of Houston. And when he graduated high school, he had just under 4,000 points in high school. He was the all-time area public high school scoring record. He's a true multi-level, multi-talented scorer. And I guess I saw him enter the portal, and I was like, man, like, he's a Houston kid. Like, how great would that be? And, I just kind of thought it was a pipe dream. And sure enough, he's coming back home. The crossovers with his games are interesting because it does overlap with Sasser a lot, like you mentioned, right? He does shoot the three ball well off the bounce. He is moving all the time off screens and stuff like that. He played with some very talented guards you mentioned there in Baylor. Sasser had a pretty talented backcourt in Houston. There's a lot of crossover here.
Absolutely, there is. Like it's great for you guys. Obviously, it stings for Baylor, but hey, what are you gonna do? And I love to see Cryer coming over. Now, Parker, as we look at this, he's coming into his senior year, but folks, keep in mind, this is the last class coming through that has that extra year of COVID eligibility. So it is his senior year, but technically we could see LJ Cryer in a Houston Cougars uniform for 2 years. Parker, is there any world in which you see that happening?
I think it probably depends on how well next season goes for him individually. He is going to, undoubtedly do the thing where he tests waters each and every offseason because that's what kind of Kelvin Sampson asks his guys to do. Having been a pro coach, he looks at like that as a very valuable process for the maturation of guys. But truthfully, I could see, he is a 6'1" shooting guard. I could see them saying, it's better to stay back and continue to work on this, that, the other thing, and get that second year. It's NIL money's a big deal. It's funny you mentioned that because linking Cougs everyone's got their own collective or whatever, but they got Marcus Sasser up to where he was making like $550,000. I was like, if he were to be a G League guy, I don't know if he quite make that kind of scratch. So I could see that being enticing enough for a hometown kid to play in front of his family every night and all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed for both years. I guess it's my way to say that.
Yes, absolutely. And listen, Cryer's not the only guard coming into this team, man. Kelvin Sampson and guards, it's just a thing that goes together like Isaac Shade and hot wings, which is my favorite food. Not that goes together to anyone else but me, but I love it. If you love me, send me some wings, folks. But Houston is also bringing in Damian Dunn from Temple. And Parker, I mean, it's just like any of these guys you can bring in is massive and great. What are you seeing out of Damian Dunn that excites you to have him in the fold?
Well, he's a 6'5" guy, a little bit longer, and I like his game because he gets the free throw line a lot. He can shoot the three ball well, and I mean he shoots it like almost 35% from behind the arc. But he is getting. I mean, he had like 7 or 8 double-digit free throw games last year. He is really, really good at getting the foul line because he's getting downhill. And frankly, if you're going to have Cryer behind the arc, and if you're going to have, we'll talk at some point, I'm sure, about big guys down low, a little bit less experienced, but there's going to be a lot of bodies in the lane. If you have a guy that knows how to take that contact and get the free throw line, it kind of adds a layer to how you score. It's also nice. I understand it's like American Athletic Conference competition, but he's got real experience under his belt. Temple is one of 4 teams that beat Houston last year. They were pretty strong. And so, or at least maybe I'm being a little biased there. I think they are. And so, he's got some pedigree under him where you've got a lot of guys on the Houston roster next season. They'll be new or young or don't have a whole lot of real minutes under their belt. He's coming in. I assume he'll start and at that third guard spot that Houston kind of runs, and he just adds a different dimension. He and Shed and Cryer are all very different scorers that other teams have to account for.
And you just mentioned Mr. Jamal Shed, and let's talk about him because right now he is in the NBA draft, not officially. He's got all that opportunity to come back. You just talked about how Coach Sampson wants his guys to go test because it's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you learn from the guys you want to be your employers? Hey, what do I got to do better to come be employed by you? I'm jumping on that opportunity. So, Parker, as you look at this, what do you think Jamal Shed will learn from NBA personnel? And ultimately, I'm going to tie you down, and I want to know, is Jamal Shed a Houston Cougar next season?
Well, I think he's Houston Cougar because, truthfully, if he's going to play at that level, he's got to have some more of a jump shot, right? I think people remember like the Memphis game winner, I guess, was a pull up from like 17 or 18 feet away. But that is not typically his game, right? There's a reason Memphis played him to that. He's much more of a downhill. I call him a running back playing basketball because the way he just like ducks his head and attacks the rim, kind of with reckless abandon. And there'll be pro teams that love that, but there won't be pro teams that love the up and down 3-point shooting, right? For a guy that's as short as he is, 6 foot 6'1", kind of again bowling ball, doesn't have super long arms. People get like Marcus was 6'3", which isn't huge, but he has a 6'7", 6'8" wingspan, right? So like, it's a whole different deal. Jamal doesn't have that. Jamal has a lot of things he's really good at. He can get in your jersey and cover from 94 feet. But he needs to add some sort of a shooting element to his game. I'm sure they're going to work with him on like here, we want to see you on movement or we see you on the bounce or whatever. But I would imagine it's some way to add shooting to his game to go to the next level. And I think he gets paid to play pro basketball at some point. I just don't know if it's at the NBA pro level. But I think he does get paid to play pro basketball after he leaves Houston. He's a very talented basketball player that someone's going to want on the roster.
Yeah. Hey, listen, go see the world, my friend. No reason not to. And with that height, the shorter height of both he and Cryer makes all the more sense what you said about Dunn slotting in as that third guard. But then, Parker, we also got Terrence Arsenault coming up, right? Like if Shed's back, who, by the way, Shed could have multiple years more to play. Dunn could have multiple years to play. Arsenault's just coming off his freshman year. This backcourt could be together for a minute. What are you seeing out of Terrence Arsenault, and how could he force his way into this starting lineup, or could he?
Well, Arsenault is one that, frankly, I think a lot of people are holding their breath on because the big phrase with him is potential, right? He was a 5-star kid out of high school at 6'5", 195. He is long-armed. But at the high school level, he was playing more like a power forward. And that's just the nature of what he was. And they were a state championship team two years in a row at Beaumont United. I mean, I don't mean to say like they were doing him wrong. They were winning basketball games and doing it. But he is transitioning into being a guard in a way that the potential is there. Draft people see it, and it's just, when does he go? I think that as he continues to work his way into the Houston rotation, next season you'll see him. Like I said, I think he's the first guard off the bench. He showed a lot of growth this season in his on-ball defense. Certainly in the assignments he was being given in on-ball defense too by the end of the year. People, everyone talked about when Marcus went down. Arsenault was the guy they put in his place, right, to start the second half when they went down right away, or in that American Athletic Conference title game. He was the guy that started for him. Right. And I think that's because Sampson trusts him on the ball defensively a lot. We'll make up the offense, right? That's always Sam. We'll figure it out. But you got to be able to stop them from scoring to win basketball games. And I would like to see him as the first guy off the bench again. I wonder if you could almost have he and Dunn on the floor at the same time and either have two big guards.
You say that would be some more height in that backcourt for sure.
About to say a couple of big guards, or do you go like uber small and have four guards out there? Because again, he's got the playing experience from his AAU club days of being more of a power forward type guy. I think Arsenault is at least he's here at least one more year. I could see him even being around two more before going pro. But I bet if he has a big sophomore year, that might be the last we see of him because pros seem to really like him. He's projected to be a late second round by some people this year.
I would love to see a lineup with all four of those guards together around somebody just wreaking havoc, both offensively and defensively. I need that. Parker, why don't you get in Kelvin's ear and tell him we all need to see that happen? The question is, who is going to be that big guy replacing Jarace Walker in the middle? We'll get into that in just a second, as well as Houston's transition from the AAC to the Big 12. That's where LJ Cryer comes in. We'll do that in just a second. But first, this episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. Grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. You might want to go bet on the Astros, but that would be silly because it's all about the Braves who beat them in the World Series 2 years ago. I know the Astros won last year, but deal with it. Parker, don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Parker, that's why I wanted to make you stick around for the FanDuel read.
I'm trying not to laugh into your read.
No, I want you to. I want to be the thorn in your side. So, Parker, let's talk about that. Jarace Walker, what a fun basketball player he was to watch this entire past year. But I love his forthrightness, right? Like immediately in the aftermath of the loss, unfortunately, he's just like, yeah, I'm out. Like, see ya. I love it. But what a tall order this is to replace that young man. How does Kelvin Sampson do it?
Well, I think Sampson's done a couple of things right on this. One, he was quick to tell fans, like, in the growth of this program, you're going to become a program that has one and done kids. Right. That just, then I mean, that from your time covering college basketball across the country with blue bloods and stuff like that. Like that's just the nature of it. Is that you're going to have, if you're going to be a developed program, you're going to have kids that come for 1 year and go to the NBA because they're ready. And Jarace was always that guy. His candor after the game was kind of funny in hindsight. But as far as what happens otherwise, I think it's interesting that the guy that Houston played at center last year, Juwan Roberts, is kind of a hybrid 4-5. There'd be moments where, Jarace was having freshman moments, or Kelvin sure thought he was anyway, and they'd move Juwan over to the 4 and play other guys at that 5 spot. And so I could see Houston running Juwan Roberts and Javier Francis out there. Javier was a young sophomore last year that there were moments where it's like he's hyper efficient. He's getting 8 points and 4 blocks in 11 minutes, or because he also had 3 fouls, right? Like he's working on those kinds of things as a young sophomore last year. But I could see those two as the starting 2 guys next year. And then they brought in their 2023 high school class 3 different power forward center types, and JoJo Tugler, who's a Houston area kid, Sed Lath, right? Cy Falls. Yep. Sed Lath is a big. He actually came in December and it used the spring as his quote redshirt year to be with the team. Yeah. He's like a big 6'10", looks like a football player across his chest and shoulders. And then they have a kid who looks like the exact opposite, and a senior coming out of California named Jacob McFarland. He's like a 6'10" beanpole, and some rotation of those guys I could see filling in some too. But the truth is they're really young, because even Javier as the 5-man, if he starts, had very limited minutes last year as a sophomore. And so you're relying heavily on Juwan Roberts, who single-handedly won like the Tulane games and stuff like that for them. I don't mean he can't do it, right, but that's a lot of importance you're placing on one guy who I like a lot. Seems like a very personable guy, But if we're going to be honest, he played really poorly in the Sweet 16 game they lost, right? People play bad. They're allowed to play bad, but he played bad in the game they lost, and that ended the season. And so I think there are people that are a little bit weary about that. People look in the transfer portal. Do you go get another guy? They only have one more roster spot, and I don't know if you go get that other guy in the roster, or if you just kind of roll with the dice you got. But it's going to be a young forward group for sure, and Juwan Roberts is the headliner, and so we're hoping for a big year out of him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Hopefully, out of those 3 freshmen coming in, somebody can at least provide just a little boost, a little help there. Well, Parker, we've had some laughs back and forth throughout this offseason because I did not include Houston in my way too early top 10. But, frankly, that's because Walker's gone, Mark's gone, Sasser's gone. Like, it's just what it is. But, man, with LJ Cryer coming in, with Damian Dunn coming in, I've bumped them up into my top 10 now. And I think the question that we still need to answer, though, is how do they adjust, or is there an adjustment period to moving into the Big 12 this upcoming season?
Well, I think you got a couple things in play here. Obviously, Cryer comes in. He had minimal minutes on that Baylor team that won it all, but he does have a national championship ring to his name. He ironically played 4 minutes in the game they beat Houston in the Final Four that year, actually.
You didn't have to bring it up.
No, it was a kind of game where everyone played it, but he got a few minutes in that one. But you have him coming in, and then obviously Coach Sampson, the big piece here, right, is he coached Oklahoma for a long time, and he coached at Indiana for a while. He coached at Washington. He understands Power 5 basketball, understands high level basketball, has his pedigree from Oklahoma for sure, and they were really, really talented while he was there. And you're hoping that all those things kind of fit together. I'm looking to see if we see any impact out of a guy that actually transferred last year and redshirted, and I don't know how much he'll play, Isaac. His name is Malik Wilson. He's a 6'3" guy, came in from Texas Tech. He left when Beard left Tech. And, he is 6'3", and at like the red and white scrimmage or what, like he jumps out of the gym. Wow. And Sampson talks all the time about how he's the best defender on the team. He doesn't fit in offensively. And so he was redshirted while you had Marcus and Jamal and Tramon and all those guys. I mean, pretty talented guys, right? I don't know if Malik Wilson gets on the floor a whole lot. It sounds like the offensive game is still fairly limited. And who knows, right? But just having a guy that saw Big 12 basketball with the run Tech had while he was there, right? Like, is that another guy that like adds some experience to the fold that you think, you got a bunch of young guys, Manuel Sharp and Terrence Arsenault are both just sophomores, but they kind of understand, hey, this is how Big 12 basketball has to be played. Never mind the fact that they also went into Virginia and beat Virginia a year ago or what, they have played good basketball teams.
That's right.
They lost the game. They're up on Alabama by 15, right? They have showed throughout the course of Sampson's tenure that they can be a very good basketball team. Some people are saying this Cryer move might put them over the top in the Big 12. I'm not quite jumping that far. It seems like it's Kansas's conference to lose to me because it has been that for I'm 32 and exactly. Yeah, I'm about to say it's my whole life. But I will say that I think they've got a really good chance, and guards win in March, and they've got really good guards, Isaac.
They do. They really do. And I'm excited to see that. I'm with you. I mean, the Big 12 runs through Kansas. That's not I don't care who's on that roster. If the guy on the sideline is Bill Self, and he just said last week that he will be back, then I got to roll with Kansas. But there's no reason to me, especially with what Coach Sampson's already brought in, to not think that Houston's going to be right there at the top of that thing, competing for a Big 12 title right out of the gate here. And so it'll be interesting to see. Parker, we'll see what continues to happen with the NBA draft movement. We expect Jamal Shead to be back, but that would be a storyline for sure if he doesn't. Brother, we are so grateful for your time. Get over that 1,000 mark, and we'll stay up to date on what's going on with the Houston Cougars roster. Folks, make sure you follow Parker on Twitter at Painsworth512 and go subscribe to Locked On Cougs. We are joined now on Locked On College Basketball by our guy, John Neighbors, the host of Locked On Arkansas. We're calling the Hogs little woo pig suey action going on. And John, in some ways, this has just been a frustrating basketball season for the Razorbacks, for Eric Musselman and crew. Began the year preseason number 10, beat eventual national runner-up San Diego State, finished the regular season, though, 19-12, 8-10 in the SEC. And frankly, that's in large part to Nick Smith Jr.'s injuries, to Trayvon Brazile missing a vast majority of the season due to injury. And let's just be honest, when you don't have personnel you're banking on, specifically with Nick Smith, to be the central focus of a team, that's going to change the way stuff goes. But John, some redemption at the end of this thing, beating Illinois in the first round and knocking off 1 seed Kansas Jayhawks before falling to eventual national champion UConn. What a kind of juggernaut they were rolling through the tournament. Just in quick summary, all of that kind of roller coaster, what was this year for the Hogs?
It was one of the weirdest ones I've ever seen. I mean, it's kind of almost hard to describe in words because of how weird it was. Because you laid it out there. It was, at least in the end, at the end result, I wouldn't say that Razorback fans were 100% like, heck yeah, what an amazing year. But due to how crazy it was and up and down it was to finish in the Sweet 16 by beating Kansas and then losing to eventual champion UConn, it became a year where it was like, man, of all the crap they had to deal with injuries and the problems that they dealt with and the losses that they had and the frustrations they had, for them to end in the Sweet 16, honestly, you couldn't ask for anything better than that. And in fact, before the season even started, even though they were a preseason top 10 team, most people would have said, hey, if you get to the second weekend, that'll be a good year. You know, it'll be great if they go further, but it'll be a good year. So I think it shows you how much Razorback fans actually only care. Like, they're a basketball program that has a lot of history, and basketball programs with history understand who cares about the regular season, conference champions, or where you place, because they were the 10 seed in the SEC. Who cares? What people remember is the NCAA March tournament and March Madness, and Arkansas was a Sweet 16 team, and they went just as far in the tournament as a team like Bama or Tennessee, who, you know, especially with Bama, who are the most dominant people. Yeah. So I think that even though it was weird, wacky, crazy, annoying, frustrating, all of that, I think Razorback fans and everybody were pretty pleased with the way it ended up, because it could have been a lot worse.
Well, and after that stretch of no Sweet 16 since 1996, all of a sudden it's a Sweet 16 three-peat, John. Like, Coach Muss has this thing going. I want to get as many Musselman shirt off moments as I can handle coming out of Bud Walton Arena. You love that. So as we look towards the offseason now, I think we got to look first at what's going out before we celebrate some news coming in. Right now, as we record this, Nick Smith Jr. seems to be fully in the draft, as does Ricky Council. I expect, I'm curious if you do as well, that we'll hear the same about Anthony Black at any point, who projects to be one of the highest college students taken in this year's NBA draft. Frankly, going above Nick Smith Jr. now was, in my opinion, was given that opportunity because of the injuries to Smith. Is that kind of how you see this playing out?
Yeah, and it's so funny. The longer that Anthony Black waits, it's more like some Razorback fans start getting hope. He's like, well, maybe he's coming back. He's not coming back. He's not coming back.
That's right.
In fact, if he did come back, I'd almost say, no, I don't want you here, because you need to go to the NBA. But I think that it's incredible to see. And speaking about Anthony Black, like, the reason he's going to go is because, as you said it, it's like he's going to be a top draft pick. And if there was ever a player that deserved it, you know, you mentioned Nick Smith and the injuries he dealt with, and obviously Jordan Walsh still kind of waiting on him, and because he was a McDonald's All-American. But the guy that played every game and played nearly every minute of every game, and who was so hurt down the stretch, like, he had bad leg issues, and because he couldn't jump, and so it was never a great shooter as it is, but that's why his free throw struggles. That's all of that came into play. So Anthony Black was just, he's going to be one of the favorite players for Razorback fans just because of his warrior mentality. I mean, how many times you see a 6'7" point guard, and him putting it together the way he did each and every game, you got to respect and appreciate him. So he's gone. The ones that people are really waiting on is Devo Davis entered into the NBA draft, but he says that he's still retaining his eligibility to come back. So I at first thought, I was like, okay, well, he'll still come back. But the more time's gone on, I'm like, you know what? He might be done. 3 straight years, as you mentioned, of Sweet 16 play, which is, showing that, Muss is one of the best in the country, and Arkansas is a program that you can do it at. All that stuff to come together. Maybe Devo's just like, hey, 3 years, I gave it my all, but I'm ready to take that next step. I'm ready to get out of there. So I could see that happening. But the way that Muss has managed rosters and done things, which I know we'll talk about with the portal and being able to get guys in good position to get drafted and all that. It's hard not to think that no matter what happens or no matter who comes in, it's going to work out, because to me, the most important player that you needed to have on this roster, realistically, on this roster next year was Trevin Brazil. And he was the one that said from the get-go, he's like, as soon as the season ends, he's like, I'm coming back. And I feel like getting him back was just that's where the key piece is going to be, because of how good he is and the game that he brings. So with him coming back, I think that's going to appeal to some guys not only on the current roster to come back, but also some transfers to say, hey, I'd love to play with that guy. He seems to have a lot going for him. So I think right now, at least at the time of the recording of this podcast, it's going about how I expected and how I was hoping for. But yeah, I think that there's still a few players we're waiting on to see what their decision will be.
John, if you had to make a call right now on Devo Davis, because this is one of the questions I wanted to ask you, is he back in Fayetteville next year or not?
Right now, gut feeling, no reason to believe anything otherwise.
Sure, yeah.
I think he's back. I do. I think he comes back. He loves playing with Eric Musselman, and they love each other. Like they're peas in a pod. And I think just because of NIL and him being an in-state kid and knowing that how he's gotten better each and every year, I think he goes to the NBA draft or combine or whatever, and he gets told, hey, these are things you need to work on. And then he comes back and he works on them. So yeah, if I had to say, I'd say probably he does come back. And if he does, that's again, just you need experience, you need continuity. And he's another huge major key piece, because you saw what he did in the tournament. You saw the leadership that he provided, and Arkansas, they have that, but they're going to need it in a major way. And I think Devo would be the guy to provide it.
Boy, that would be great to have him back in a Razorback uniform next year. Hopefully Trayvon Brazil can get back. What a year he was having before that injury. Would love to have him really up and going in time to make a very key contribution to next year's squad, which will not include Mikal Mitchell. But the big news, one of the biggest transfer portal commitments we've had to this point, is Tramon Mark is coming over from Houston. And let's not also forget Keon Menafield coming from Washington. Now, John, 2 point guards coming in. We know Muss will take them in spades in the backcourt. How do you see both of these young men fitting in to the squad, which I know, again, isn't perfectly formed yet for next year? So I'm asking you to forecast ahead without too much knowledge. But how do you see them as part of next year's team?
Well, starting with Mark, to me, just watching him and seeing the type of player he is, he's the quintessential Eric Musselman player, where he is good at offense. Like, he's not elite. He's not great. He's averaged 10 points a game. He gets 5-6 rebounds a game, which is good for a guard. He doesn't turn the ball over a whole lot. He doesn't shoot at the high clip. I mean, I think he hits 33% from three. He's a 77% free throw shooter. It's like, he's not just an elite offensive player, but what he does have is he can do offense. It's his defense that's going to be the difference maker, and why Muss wanted this guy so much, because we know Muss is about defense, and the guards, you will not play for Muss if he can't play defense. Jalen Graham, another player that's coming back for Arkansas, I think he's got a lot of upside, and he could be a good player, but the problem is as good as his offense was, he couldn't play defense, and that's why he didn't play much. So by getting a player like Mark, not only you have an experienced dude he was on the number 1 team in the country throughout the most of the year at Houston. He's played at a high level. He played against high quality opponents. I think, again, he's just the perfect player for what Arkansas is going to need defensively and getting out of him. And for Menafield, I'll be honest, I haven't watched much Washington basketball. Like, it's not something I just
Why
broke
would
down.
you? Honestly.
I know it's not on my YouTube TV or anything like that. But what I did do is kind of, once he committed to Arkansas, and I dove into it a little bit more. And what I really like about him, and this is where I think this is much just putting and connecting dots. First off, he's got great handles. He's a very good handling. He doesn't turn it over with his handles. I think his assist to turnover ratio is about 1.8, which is great for a point guard. So he doesn't turn the ball over a lot, and he has great handles. But again, it goes back to the whole thing. He's not a great shooter, might be the best offensive player. But the one thing that I've noticed, and if you see his highlights and what he's really good at, is driving and lobbing. And the reason that Arkansas needs someone like that is because we just talked about Trevin Brazil. The dude is such a freak athlete at 6'9", 6'10", and has such long wingspan, he's got it all. And when it comes to that part of the game, That's something that when Brazil was healthy in the early part of the year, so much of the offense was helped by that, by him just being able to somebody driving, whether it's Anthony Black or Devo or whoever, drive in, lob it up, drive in, lob it up, because it's hard to stop. So that's why I believe that Minifield was there for several reasons, but seeing that's a huge part of his game and he's really good at it too. I think that's just more like, hey, you can do more, but we want you and Brazil to be the two guys that have a lot of assists and a lot of dunks and a lot of layups and a lot of the offense, because they feel like it's going to be a tough thing to stop.
Okay, cannot wait to see how this Arkansas Razorbacks roster continues to come together ahead of next season. Will it be a fourth straight second weekend NCAA tournament team? We will watch for that, certainly. Folks, make sure you check out Locked On Razorbacks. Check out our guy, John Neighbors, at BuzzJohnNeighbors on the Twitter machine. John, thanks so much for joining us. Can't wait to see what else happens this offseason.
Absolutely. Can't wait till next season already, man. Appreciate it.
That's it for today's episode of Locked On College Basketball. Thanks so much for joining me and for joining my guest, Parker Ainsworth, John Neighbors. Once again, please make sure you go check out both those guys and their great work for Houston and Arkansas. More great stuff coming up tomorrow, more transfer portal news, more all sorts of all of it. That's what we're doing right now. That's where we're at. It's a lot of fun to see who's going where. Please don't forget to subscribe to the show. We are closing in on 800 YouTube subscribers. Man, we're getting right there. Smash the like button, comment on the show. As always, apologies to the lawyer family. Go Wildcats. And until tomorrow, peace.